Hi everyone, welcome back to this video. You recognize this model in Unity in the last video where I sort of exported this from Blender. So I stopped at the stage of actually exporting the models into Unity and then visualize it like this. But I've sort of realized that I need to go back to Blender and ensure that I have the right model that I'm exporting. This is the model in Blender, and there seem to be some things not shown in there, hidden. They're probably hidden with the H key. You just need to use the Alt H to make them visible. But ultimately, this model will be the one we'll be using in the Unity application. If you remember, what the plan is to actually remodel the whole of this and then export them into Unity. So I've sort of modeled a few things in the last videos. If you've watched the video, and then I sort of put the holes on the sides as well. So if you go back to the Unity application, this is what it looks like, but I need to sort of verify that this model is exactly what's in the Blender application as well. So I'll go into the scene and look at the name of this particular the bowl. Let's see if I have it on the prefab. No, I think I have it on the mesh. I need to drag it into the prefab. So I'll drag it into the prefab to create a prefab. And then I need to drag the ship body hull as well. What I think I'll do is to create an empty that will serve as the primary root of the entire ship. So that'll be ship parent, so that every model I insert will be parented to that, and the transforms will be reset to 0. So I'll drag this into the parent ship parent empty and sort of see where it's located. So it seems like the ship parent empty position is actually external outside the ship itself. So I'll also reset the ship parent empty and sort of place those models elsewhere. So I'll reset both models. I'll drag this out and click reset, and same goes for a ship body hull, reset, and it's all placed them at the right place. But this ship, the bow top deck seems to be missing. I'm not sure where it's gone. If I check on there, it's not there. It seems to be actually empty. So I'll probably, I think there's something wrong, so I'll probably delete that and go into the prefab and delete that as well, and then check the mesh and probably delete that from the mesh. So I think I need to do some work with Blender, because the intention is to actually make sure that I synchronize all the models from Blender and being able to insert them into Unity. So I'll go into Blender. Yeah, so I'm going to delete these two. I sort of kept them there just in case I want to use them. I'll delete them. Click the bowl, and we'll probably do the railings in a separate video coming up soon. So I'll look at the bowl and so try to export that. So what I'll do is go into Explorer and try to locate where the folder of the Unity applications mesh is. Then I'll copy the link and go back into Blender, and then I can do an export of this model. First of all, I'll check the transforms, make sure it's all applied, and I'll go to File, Export, and FBX, and then paste in the mesh location. I'll probably add a reference so I can always locate it, rename it to Titanic mesh. I'll probably make it new Titanic mesh. Probably prefer lowercase anyway, so I'll just change that to new underscore Titanic underscore mesh, and I'll move that upwards. Yeah, so I can always refer. I'll just delete the ones I have in there. They must have been for some other past projects or past recordings, so I'll delete those. So I can always go back to that reference point, that mesh point. So now I'll rename this. So I'm sure what it is: bow underscore deck underscore front, and then make sure click on apply transformer and mesh, and then selected object and export to Unity. So if you go into Unity and check the model, so sort of drag that into ship parent, and it's so small, so that's a problem with the sizing. And that's what I want to avoid. I want to be able to export the models directly from Unity and have them just snap to the right position in the application. Export them from Blender rather. So that's how small it is. That means we have a problem with the sizing. So we need to go into Unity. I'll see our character standing in there in the mist. We need to go into Blender and ensure that we have the right size. So I'm just gonna delete that, and then we'll go into Blender. Back in Blender, I need to check that the size and transforms are right, and whether we actually have the right ship model. So I'm going to export the hull itself and see how it compares with what we have in Unity. We'll select the hull, give it a right name, probably add main in there because we're going to eventually use this hull instead. And then that goes to Unity. Then we need to open it up in Unity and drag that into the ship parent, and that's how small it is. So there's a problem, there's a difference in size that we need to be sure of. I'd rather we have a real life size for a ship so that we don't have to be comparing and contrasting sizes. So I think I'll need to fix this first of all in Blender and then have it set to, so well, let's reset this to 0, saves the transform is not set, and probably go delete the larger one because we're not going to work with that anyway. But I'm going to delete this as well because eventually we need to be sure that, but ultimately I don't have to delete it because when we update it in Blender, it's just going to overwrite it. So back in Blender, what I'm going to do is actually start to check certain parts of the ship. So I'll sort of unhide a few things. So that's the enclosure it used to be in. That's the plan to have in that enclosure. And then I'm going to sort of check a few details on the ship. So what I'll do next is actually check the model in Blender to be sure that I have the right model in place. And what I've had to do offline is to go check my Blender files for the Titanic. I see I have I saw I have several copies. So what I've done is to sort of going to normalize this to be the exact size we need for the Titanic model. And so if I go back to the Blender model, we'll see if I can export items from there so I can replace what we have in Unity. I'm probably going to go with the bow first, and ultimately later in this video you realize that I sort of rebuild everything from scratch really. So I'm going to export the bow. I need to rename it because I need to start getting that's one of the things I observed later after building a model, that I needed to have named them properly. So I'm going to name this, give it a name that I can refer to later when I want to export it, and then I'm going to put it in its own collection. This can change later if I need to, so I'll just create a collection, drop it there, and next is to export this to Blender. So I'll just go get the folder where Blender has a mesh bit in place. So I just click export, so applied, and then go back to export and select mesh and select object. Make sure I select the folder and probably create a folder, separate folder for bow items. bow items, and then go into that folder and put this mesh. Make sure that's selected, and then what I'll probably also do is to rename this bow deck. Yep. And then go into Unity and drag that into shape parent under bow items, shape parent, and it drops in there. So what you'll see that there's the transparent bit there. Unity does not like to see the opposite side of the normal, so I have to apply a modifier. This time it's solidify modifier to sort of thicken the width or the walls of the bow. So I need to go back into Blender and go into the modifiers. So it has a few modifiers there. I'm just going to add in the solidify modifier, and this time you observe a few things in terms of how we export FBX, either apply transform or not apply transform. So it looks that way because the surfaces are too close. When you move closer, it seems to clear out, but I'll probably make a modification to this solidify modifier and make it even thickness, and probably increase the thickness as well, and then do an export. I'll save and then export FBX. Now the same name, mesh, select object. Now I'm going to click on apply transform. Let's see what that looks like in Unity. And what you see is it's gone from that location. It's supposed to be there actually because it's still in the same. So I'm going to search for where it is. The same. I'll probably go back to Blender and see whether properly exported. So I'm going to try to export again, and this time not click the apply transform. Select the same object, export, and when we go into Blender, when we go into Unity rather, it drops in there. You can see the wall now. The solidify modifier makes sure that the walls are not transparent. So that's how you actually address objects within Unity, to make sure they don't have transparent walls. But the concern now is that the fact that we clicked on apply transform and it sort of dropped it somewhere else, that issue will affect our flow. So but what I'll do next is to export the surface, make sure that the transforms are applied as well. Then later we'll export the anchor ports there, anchor position or anchor slot. I'll name this bow deck surface, and then put in a collection. I'll probably just select the collection, or just use a new one. Later I can move them around. What's important is that the names are consistent, so I can always refer to them later. So I'll export FBX. I'm going to export. Note that, so that's bow deck surface, and then note that I haven't selected the apply transform, and I go into Unity and drag that into the shape parent, and it drops it right there. Character still back there. I'm just gonna move it back, try to position him just at the position just on top of the deck, try to place him there properly. Okay, so that's good. It seems a bit too big, because for the real shape itself it shouldn't be that big. It's a character, so I'm just gonna reduce the size a bit. We'll try 0.3, 0.2. Yeah, that size looks alright actually. Yeah, it looks alright. So we're probably gonna go into Blender again, and then make sure that we have the transform applied. But I probably want to check to be sure that we have the right model shape of the ship, because the ship needs to be the exact size of about 269.1 meters. I'm going to use the Visual tool. Yeah, click show and segment, and you can see there that it has 382.78, which will be too long, or it's bigger than our 269.1 meters, which is the size of the real ship itself. So we need to sort of reduce this and be sure that we have the right proportion for the ship. Gotten the size, just verifying again on Wikipedia that it's 269.1 meters. So I'm just going to try to get that size in. Ultimately, once I get the size in, all I have to do is sort of either apply transform across the entire object, or apply them as I export them into Unity. So I think I have the right size. Next is to position it at the center of the origins. We can see we need to be able to assign a singular entity. So if I try to apply all the transforms, it gives me a list, which is an error. That means I have to do it then one by one. So what I'll do probably is to go to, so I can see the transforms are everywhere. The values are just everywhere. I need to apply them. So what I'll do is select the mesh, the hull of the ship, and see how that works in terms of positioning. I need to make sure that the center of the ship is at the center of the world, so I'll need to scroll in. I'll rather do this as an object, because if I do that while in edit mode, it will not move the center of gravity of the object. So now I can move it, try to position the ship at the center of the world. So I need to make sure I know the center of the ship hull itself, because it's going to be the main parent of the ship. So that's the center of the world. I'm just going to press A again, select everything, and try to position the ship center at the center of the world. I'll probably scroll further in just to be sure I have the right position, and then press A again, select everything, and try to move it into that point. So I haven't yet gotten it right, so I'll need to Control A again and move the ship, move that dot into that center point. Still further in, scrolling further in, so I need to make sure I have that dot in there. There might be more efficient ways to do this, but I sort of find out the fastest, easiest way is just doing manually. So I have to press GZ and move it upwards into that point, and then probably check this from front as well, just to make sure that I have. So I've scroll in further and move back that in, make sure it's in the center of the world, and ultimately I'll probably need to apply the transform of all the objects to use the center of the world as the center of origin. So I'll go save, make sure I have it saved, and then select the hull, and probably go into edit mode, see whether it's actually at the center of the world, and I can see it's mirrored. So I need to make sure that it's still at that center point origin. And looking at the modifiers, obviously the modifiers rely on the center of origin. So if I disable all the modifiers, just focus on the mirror, disable the mirror, and see whether that points at the center of the world. Yeah, it seems to be at the center of the world, so I'll just enable the mirror, enable the modifiers, and probably apply the transform. So I've applied transform the hull. That's how I'm going to do the same thing for every other model in the ship. So I'll save, I'll attempt an export to Blender, select the mesh, the ship hull, select the mesh, select objects, apply transform is not applied now. So let's see what it looks like. So that's the problem. Now I'm sure it's because we did not select the apply transform. So that is the expected response, or the expected state of the export. So if we select apply transform this time, I will look into Unity. It should probably align. Yeah, so that means all the modifiers and transforms are applied, and then it's placed in the right position. So I need to delete these other models because they don't really fit in. I need to export them from Blender. So going back into Blender, I'm going to select the bowl. And selecting the bowl surface, the bowl sides, apply all transforms, make sure it's alright. And then next thing will be to so I'm going to check why some things are hidden there. Yeah, alright. So unfortunately I didn't have this in place when I resized the shape. So I probably need to undo everything using Ctrl Z, go far back to when I first resized the shape. So all those items, I'll unhide those items, bring them back into place. So first of all, undo everything. I'm going to look at it from the side. The measurement, the values you see there are the measurement from the ship, so I can see them over the model. So I'm just going to try to resize it to 269.1. So we're watching the size out there, 269.1, almost there. Yeah, I think that's fine, 269.1.1 meters, which is quite close to the required length of the Titanic. So I'll probably work with that and hide the enclosure so I can work with the ship. So now that I have the 2969, I can reposition the ship. I need to make sure that the center of the ship is at the center of the world. This will make it easier to export items into Unity. You'll simply snap into the right position. So I'm just going to select everything and move the ship. Try to position that center of gravity, or assume center of gravity of the ship at the center of the world. So I could try this in edit mode, but unfortunately it make it a bit tougher to move the center of gravity around. So what I'll probably do is do this in object mode. So when exporting to Unity, I'll just apply the transforms. So I'm just going to object mode, probably going to solid view as well. But I guess the wireframe should be fine, so I'll just move it and try to position it there. So the objective is to get that dot in the middle of that 3D cursor and scroll in further in to make sure I get an accurate position. Positioning, and then try scrolling again, see how far in I can go. There might be other ways to do this, but I just feel from the experience I've had so far, it just makes sense to be able to just move it down and try to position it in the center of the wall. And the essence of doing this is to make sure that when I place several items onto the ship, they so snap to the same position in Unity as well. So I'm going to look at it from the top, pressing 7, and try to move it straight to the center of the wall. I'll probably press GX and move it along the x-axis. Try to make sure that it's actually at the center of the wall. So I'll need to go back, press GX and move it back to that position. Yeah, scroll in if possible, if you can scroll it any further. Scroll in and try to get that exact position. There might be a need to look at it from the front, but I think that's fine. Once we have that exact spot, now we can be sure that the shape has the same length and has its center at the center of the wall. So I'll save this and start to look at exporting the model. So I'll save this and I'll probably go into solid viewport shading so I can see the hull. Next thing I can do is to apply the transform for the hull, so it doesn't give me any problem now because it's a single object, and then try to export to Unity. So I'll make sure I select object mesh and apply transform this time, Go into the right folder, select the model itself and export. And let's go see what it looks like in Unity. You can see it doesn't change, which means it's perfect now. That is the exact size we need for the ship eventually. So what I need to do is to make sure that every object, now the character is still standing there. I might just move it back to the ship, but we'll probably do that after we've brought in the items on the bow. So I'll look at the bow base or surface and try to export that, but I'll probably remove that. So the shading there was by the shrink wrap. The shrink wrap is supposed to be used to straighten the sides when we inserted the holes on the sides, and I'll probably hide that for now. Apply the transform. You can see that the transform has values that it shouldn't have. Zero, it all should be 0 and 1. So I'll just apply the transform and then export as well, and then go into, so I'll need to go into the selected folder, bow items, and give it the right name, bow deck surface, and then make sure I select mesh, select objects. I'll probably create a name for the export configuration, so that works. Unity Titanic, and then export. And then when I go into Unity, it should come there. So when I drag this into the shape parent, it should snap into position. Exactly that's what we're looking for. We want them all to snap into position without having to manually drag them across Unity. So we need the models to be properly integrated in Unity, in Blender, and then when we export it to Unity, it should be just accurately placed. And then we can export the surface as well. I'll probably rename it. Make sure the transform is properly in place. Apply transforms. Export. And rename it here. Bow surface. And then export. And then in Unity, I'll just need to drag that into the ship parent, and then it slaps straight into position. And we could probably now bring the character to the ship surface and bring it down, try to position it. It does look too big for the ship model actually. The assurance is that this ship has realistic size proportions, so we probably need to resize the human, the character, so it's properly the right size. So we could put at 0.1, and that seems more like the real proper size of a human standing on the ship, but we'll probably confirm that later. So what I'll do later is bring in the other pieces for the anchor and the anchor port, and then we'll deal with the items on the bow surface, and then we'll bring in the railings. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Cheers, bye.